Welcome back to the Unstuck movement. As always, I'm your host, Rob Z. Really excited for today's episode. We're going to talk leadership today, competition, hiring, mistakes, innovation, and legacy, among so many other things. I have an incredible man with us today, John Hewitt, founder of Jackson Hewitt and Liberty Tax Service, two of the most successful tax preparation businesses in North America. And John, I want to dive in right off the bat with a powerful question, because I work with businesses myself, and one of the biggest problems, the thing when you ask, what's a major issue you're having right now, is finding, hiring, keeping, retaining the right people. And you yourself obviously have years of experience in this area, and I'm sure tons of wisdom. So what is your secret to hiring great people?
I'm glad you asked, because over the last, especially since COVID, it's become more and more of a difficult problem for virtually all businesses. And I take a page out of the book. Tom Watson Sr., founder of IBM, one of the founders, said, give me 100 people with great attitude or 100 people with great engineers. And I'll take the people with great attitude, because you can teach engineering. And one of the biggest mistakes, Rob, that I've made in my career is trying to change people's attitude, and never been able to do that. I'm just 100% unsuccessful at changing people's attitude. So it has to start, if you want a great culture, which is key to greatness, key to a great company is great culture, then you have to have people with the right attitude. And it starts with hiring. So when we interview, especially key people, officers, directors, key people in our organization, any management person is interviewed by numerous members of our team, and everyone's checking for attitude. Then we'll worry about skill later. And so it starts with that analysis.
Oh, man. And, attitude is something that you can't teach people. You have to know what to look for when you look for the right attitude. What are the things that you look for to spot somebody who has the best attitude, the right attitude for what you're hiring for?
Yeah, you have to be very careful, because people are best at their interview. They're better at interviews than at their first date. I mean, people are so good. I was watching an episode of Gary Vaynerchuk, Changing Channels, the other day, and he said it isn't just hiring, it's because they'll fool you, they'll trick you. And so he said you got to be quick afterwards to either fire or promote after you hire. So you can't just leave it all to hiring. You have to follow up and ensure. But I think great attitude starts with a genuine feeling of gratitude. And like that, you have to be grateful for who you are, where your blessings are, what you've been given. And if you start with if you start with a appreciation, if you understand this, and almost very few people understand this, that or really sinks into them, to be alive and healthy in the United States of America, you're in the top 1%-2% people in the world. So you got to be grateful. And so what we try to personally dig, different people in my staff look for different things, but I look for, are they grateful for the where they are in life?
Yeah. How do you ask the right questions to find out if somebody is grateful? Before I ask that question, but I want to touch on something first. I had a friend a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about hiring, and the question he asks everybody when he brings them in for an interview, before he hires them, is, tell me about your neighbors, which I thought was a really fascinating question to ask, because your neighbors are people that are very close to you, but you might not know very well. They're in close proximity to you, and you have to kind of live with them being close to you. And the way you answer that says a lot about your attitude and how you're grateful for your surroundings. Are there certain things that you do ask to highlight?
Well, I have to veto that in this sense, that I have the greatest attitude of anyone you'll ever meet. and the most gratefulness of anyone you ever meet. And I don't know my neighbors or want to know my neighbors. I've lived in my neighborhood for 10 years. I live in a cul-de-sac. I've never met one neighbor. I do not want to know my neighbors. I'm an introvert, and I spend most of my time with people like yourself that I've never met. And it's not something that I'm good at. Well, I might be good at it sometimes, but it's not something that I aspire to do. I have enough people I meet thousands of people every year. In my career, I brought in 5,500 franchisees who had hundreds of thousands of employees, and I've had thousands of employees. I have to be out there enough in society. I mean, we're bringing in an average of 250 new franchisees a year. That means I have to meet 1,000 people a year, and I'm not. It's not something I like to do. So don't ask. So I don't want to go and meet and spend time with my strange neighbor. Right? So I'm not sure that's the greatest test. But without arguing about that, it might be. But what I do, let me tell you what I do, and that is that you asked me about, and that is I ask them things like, what was your favorite job? What was your favorite part of that job, and why? And then, what was your least favorite job? And I try to dig when they're describing their career or their schooling or whatever. I try to get into and to cleverly, because I can't let them know that I'm looking for attitude. You know, someone says, "What are you looking for?" I never say attitude, because then they'll bring it to the top. So I never tell them up front. But I'm always asking probing questions about events in their lives, trying to figure out their attitude. And what was your favorite boss? And what was your favorite project? What was your favorite part of the job? And what was your least favorite? And in that way, I'm trying to glean whether it's someone that will fit in our culture.
Yeah. So if you're watching or listening right now, and you have a business, make sure you're writing down those questions. What was your favorite job? What was your favorite boss? What is it that you liked about him? What is it you liked about that job? Favorite and least favorite part of the job. Great questions to ask. Thank you for that. And to go back to the neighbor thing, the point of what he was saying was, if you ask somebody about their neighbors and they just trash, maybe they don't even know them that well. They're like, I don't know, and I don't care, or that they say, or they do know about them and they just trash them right off the bat, right? Or if they say really amazing things about them, it kind of highlights. Now, if you ask them and they say, well, I don't know, I don't know them, and I don't really try to get to know my neighbors, that's kind of an ambiguous answer. They might not have get a read on you for. But if somebody is really putting their neighbors down, trashing them, speaking poorly about them, that can be a sign, hey, that's kind of how they're going to treat coworkers and things of that nature. Would you agree with that, or what are your thoughts on that?
You know, I hate to go off the cuff on that, and I like to think things through. And at first thought that makes sense, but in my questions, looking at their former schooling and their career, and if aren't they going to trash people in that? When I say, what was your worst job ever, and what was your worst boss ever, isn't that likely to trigger the same kind of, and in a more clear way, in the sense that I'm not asking them to get good neighbors in the future. I'm asking if they're going to fit with my employees and with me. So I'm not a fan of that, but I wouldn't say it's a hopelessly useless question.
Great point. That's a great point. Thank you for that. And okay, before we go any further, I just want to welcome people here. This is the Unstuck movement. I created this platform because I have been stuck at many different places in my life, personally and professionally, and I found breakthrough. So I wanted to bring people on the show who have found incredible breakthroughs in their lives, so you know, the viewer, that it's possible for you also to find that breakthrough personally and professionally. We're sponsored by the Connected Leaders Academy. Check out connectedleadersacademy.com, and also the Pro Podcaster Academy if you want to launch your own podcast and do it streamlined and monetize the platform and have it be a place of great impact for you and for others. Go to robzwentz.com. unstuck.com. Today, John Hewitt is with us. As I said, founder of Jackson Hewitt and Liberty Tax Service, two of the most successful tax prep businesses in North America. Now building his third empire with loyalty brands, he continues to revolutionize business through innovation, faith, and fierce leadership. One of my big questions for you, sir, is you're doing all these podcasts. What drives you to keep going? What drives you to come on podcasts and share your wisdom and your experience?
You know, I've on my third major company, I built two companies that were worth $1.5 billion. Two major companies, Jackson Hewitt and Liberty Tax. They had 10,000 offices, public companies worth $1.5 billion. And I had over the years about 3 different mission statements between the two of them. But my new mission statement is the best ever. And I encourage everyone to steal it and use it. And it's the mission statement of my company is the same as my mission on this podcast and my mission in life in general. And that is having fun, improving lives. And I believe that life is too short. You have to enjoy what you do. If you're living a happy, thank God it's Friday life, you're in the wrong life. With me, it's thank God it's Monday. So find something you love to do. And so that's the first part of our mission statement is just have fun. And then there's nothing more rewarding than improving lives. You know, when I was a kid, Rob, I've always been confident. I guess until you succeed, it's cocky. I've always been cocky and then confident because now that I've succeeded, I'm confident. But before that, I was cocky. I grew up poor. I knew I was going to be rich, and I didn't know how or what way I was going to achieve it. But I was just confident. I knew I could do it, and so I thought I would make a few $1 million and retire. But along the way, I realized, what would I do? I mean, I play chess, I play bridge, I'm life master. I do things that I enjoy, but Rob, there's nothing more rewarding than improving other people's lives. I've created 1,000 millionaires, and it's just so I have the greatest mission statement. I love it. Everyone in your listeners can steal it. Having fun, improving lives, and that's what I want to accomplish on these podcasts that I do, is to improve the world around me, improve lives.
I absolutely love that. That is awesome. And I'm going to be honest with you. I think I'm going to steal that mission statement. Maybe I might tweak it just a little bit, but it's so good. I get having fun, improving lives. What could be more important, right? Enjoying yourself and making people's lives better. And, you know, so often in life, so few people get the encouragement that they want or need, right? So when you step in and you give them that encouragement, you give them value and you improve their life, leaving people better than you found them. I love that quote. It's so good because it's the ultimate win-win sort of situation. And for
let me comment quickly on what you said about few get encouragement. It's even worse than that. You get discouraged. People try to hold you back. They don't want you to get outside the herd. They don't want you to be superstar. They want you, oh, you can't do that. Oh, that's no one else is doing that. You can't do that. People will hold you back. And not even just your enemies, but your friends and your teachers and your parents, everyone will try to bring you back to normal. So it's not only don't they encourage you, they discourage you.
Yeah. And they might not even intend to do that. It might not be on purpose. It might be out of self-preservation, right? That they do it,
or they think they're doing you a favor.
Right. They're saving you from potential failure or something like that.
Right. They're afraid to take risks, and they're scared for you to take the risk.
Is this something for you you've had to cultivate over your life, or is this something you were kind of born with from a young age? This was who you were.
Yeah, I've never. Kathy Lee Gifford wrote a book, and in the book there's a chapter called The Age of Bliss, and she says until you're 6, 7, 8 years old, you think you can do anything. You can be an astronaut, you can be president of the United States, you can be Batman. And then everyone will hold you back and say, no, you can't do that. You can't because of this, this, and this. And she said she was teaching people to get back in the age of bliss. And I realized somehow I was so cocky that I never fell out of the age of bliss. One of my many blessings, and I've been blessed incredibly. The reason for my success is not mine, it goes to God, right? I've been incredibly blessed with incredible talent. But I've never ever lost the faith that I was going to be a superstar.
Oh wow, man, I love that so much. One of the questions I love to ask people was what they wanted to be when they were 10 years old, because at 10 years old, like you were just saying, you're old enough to know what you like without needing a reason to like it. You just love that thing, and you're young enough that the world hasn't convinced you otherwise. So at 10 years older, you said like 6, 7, 8 years old, what is it that you wanted to be?
I wanted to be first baseman for the New York Yankees.
Did you ever?
I was smart, and I was an anomaly because I didn't get along with people in school because I was very smart and I was a good athlete. And my favorite, I fell in love with Mickey Mantle on the New York. I'm that old that I fell in love with Mickey Mantle on the New York Yankees and Jim Brown on Cleveland Browns, and they were my heroes. But I wanted to be first, and so I was a switch hitter when I was playing Little League because of Mickey Mantle, and I wanted to be first baseman. But along the way, I realized, to be great, you have to focus, and you have to, there's books on the 10,000 hour rule that you have to devote 10,000 hours to be a Wayne Gretzky or a Michael Jordan or a Mickey Mantle or a superstar. And I wasn't willing to give that commitment to baseball, and so I was lazy, so I could never get there. And so I had to go on a different path. But until I was a teenager, I wanted to be on the New York Yankees professional baseball player.
So that's what I was curious about, because just because you didn't become the professional baseball player, what were the characteristics, or what was the essence of wanting to be that carried over to what you ended up doing? Because there had to have been traits that were associated to being that high level ball player to being high level in business that you are now. What carried over?
The drive. If you read Made in America by Sam Walton, he says in the foreword of the book, or in the first chapter, he said, people ask me why I'm Sam Walton, why I achieved all this, because he was a very plain guy. I mean, I've been to the museum, the Sam Walton Museum, and he drove a red pickup truck full of dents, and he had a dog, and he was a good old homeboy, and he lived in a modest, two-story home, and he raised his children in little teeny Bentonville, Arkansas. And I was at the first Walmart store in the museum in the town square of Bentonville, and the first store was called Walton 5 and 10 cent store. And I don't know if you're old enough to remember, there used to be a series of 5 and 10 cent stores. There was, now we have the dollar store. Back in the 50s, there was not Woolworths, but Grant's 5 and 10 cent. I mean, there was 2 or 3 chains that were 5 and 10 cent stores. So the first Walmart on the little town square in Bentonville, Arkansas, with less than 15,000 people, is called Walton 5 and 10 cent store. And he was back and they showed his seat. He was cheaper than cheap. They talk about him like they would want to drop a nickel to see if he leaned over and picked it up. I mean, he's a multi-millionaire, right? And he was so cheap, but he had a see-through plastic in the back where there was a desk. There was a little alcove in the back of the 5 and 10 cent store, and he could see everything going on in the store. And there was like a little barrel, like a peach barrel, that was only like 2 feet high and about a foot wide, or not even 2 feet wide. He said if you were a salesman or came and visited him, you would have to sit on this little barrel. It was too cheap to buy a chair. So, but he said, what's the difference? He said, my drive. He said, the only thing I can think of is my drive. And so I've always been driven. So that was true. And people don't understand that to be great, you have to have constant improvement. And you cannot be great without constant discomfort. And you have to constantly change, constantly improve. And that's uncomfortable. And so you have to be prepared to be uncomfortable. And I had to find out what I would be uncomfortable in. And it wasn't baseball, unfortunately. I still would have, I don't ever regret anything, but I still love the Yankees.
But that book is so good, by the way. If you've never read Sam Walton's Made in America, what a phenomenal book. It's just so fun to learn his story and where Walmart came from and the kind of man that he was. And, what you just said makes a lot of sense, right? You need to have great drive and embrace constant change and improvement and the struggle that comes with that. So going back to what you said about your mission statement, having fun and improving lives, it's easier to have incredible drive. It's easier to embrace change and that struggle whenever you're having fun. So you got to be in something you're having fun with, right? To really want to embrace that.
People find when they do a good job at something, they're enjoying it. And so it's to me, I always wonder, is it the chicken or the egg, right? Do they, when people are good at something and they have their strengths, and they're good at it and they enjoy it. Now, which comes first? You have the strength and therefore you enjoy using it, or you enjoy something and then that becomes your strength. I'm not sure which comes first, but it's kind of a chicken and egg. But yes, people, the happiest people and the people that do best in life find something they love to do and they focus on it and improve it.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so real quick, we got to pause to shout out the sponsor of the show. When we come back, though, I want to, as a man of faith myself, you can see the cross in the background. I'd love to know how faith has shaped your business journey, and how do you bring those two worlds together? Because oftentimes, and I've struggled with this, and I've been learning, how do I integrate those two things? You can sometimes feel like, okay, I am a man of faith, but in business, I gotta kind of hide that, and you hear that often. I hear that often from business owners. How have those two journeys come together to create something amazing? We'll talk about that in 1 minute. Are you struggling to make consistent, valuable content for yourself? Do you want to have an efficient and effective way to create content that attracts the people that you want to connect with in life, the people you want to build relationships with in business? Do you want to be the go-to authority at what you do, at what you're great at? Would it be helpful for you if you had a platform that connects you to incredible people in your industry? The kind of platform that gets you leads and lands you clients without you having to beat down anybody's door or blow up anybody's inbox. Whether you're already creating content or you're desiring to start and it's something that's been kind of burning inside of you for a while, I urge you and encourage you to check out the Pro Podcaster Academy. Get started right now. Join the waitlist at robzwentz.com.
Hi, my name is Jose Escobar, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Connected Leaders Academy. We're a growing tribe, a community of entrepreneurs all over the world globally. If you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to grow personally and professionally, scale your influence, develop your skill sets, move the needle in your business, more clients, more money, more profit, the bottom line, and of course, grow your circle and your network like never before, join the Connected Leaders Academy today. Check me out on Instagram and on Facebook, the @ JASCO25. We look forward to having you join us. Take care.
John, phenomenal conversation. Thank you so much for this so far. And I want to talk about faith and that being a part of your business journey. How has that shaped your direction?
And first of all, when I was a kid, and well, even when I was a young man, when I was in my 20s and up until my mid 30s, I always wrestled with fitting my faith in with my business and my life, and not just my business, but I kind of heard the preacher say, every one of us needs to be a preacher. Almost, you have to you have to spread the gospel and tell your friends and recruit and so I felt uncomfortable because that I'm an introvert and I'm not good at it. And after all, we can't all be ministers. Someone's got to be a farmer, and someone's got to, I mean, etc. I mean, someone's got to be a baseball player, and whatever the occupations are, we can't all be ministers. And yet, I felt they were almost saying I had to do that, and I really got an eye opening for me when I was on the finance committee at my church. And because I'm good at that, I was a CEO of a company, and I'm great at math, and after all, I've been doing taxes for 56 years, so I know the tax system and accounting, and I've been a CEO of 2 public companies. So, but this was before I ran a public company. I was maybe in my mid 30s, and I began to build my company and have to travel a lot. So I ran into I missed a meeting because I was on the road. And on Sunday morning, I saw the chairman of the committee, and I said to him, "I'm sorry I missed the meeting. I was in wherever, Kansas City." And he said, "Don't worry, just do what you do best." And that morning, the talent story was the focus of the sermon, and that's my favorite parable, where God gives the Bible gives an example of three servants with different skill sets, and 2 of them doubled, and 1 of them buried it in the ground and stayed the same. And to both the 2 that doubled, one had 5 and the other had 2, the words were the same. The master said, "All the riches of heaven and earth will be yours." And the other said, "You're going down. You're a bad person. Get out of my sight." And so I learned a valuable lesson then emphasize, do what you're good at. And along the way, so I learned that. And as I began that journey of focusing on my talent, I began to I say things in my talks, and I do hundreds of podcasts and hundreds of talks every year. And I don't actively think about going out of my way to do it, but whenever I can, I cite the Bible. And for example, I have top 10 for almost everything, and because that's the 10 Commandments. And I talk about focusing on your skill versus your weakness, which is the talent story. And here's an example of how a story that I tell that I stole out of the Bible. I mean, really, I steal things from the Bible in business. And here's one of them. This could be my favorite. I was sitting in church, and 35 years ago, and the minister said, "Every one of us sins every day." And my first thought was, wow, I get that I do, but he's admitting that he does. Now, it didn't occur to me until about months later, probably 2 months later. I'm driving along and saying, wait a minute. In my company, I was with Jackson Hewitt then, we have our 10 principles, because I do everything in tens, right? Top 10 things that are most important to be successful at our grooming business or our tax business or our roofing business. Top 10. These are the top 10 things. So we always have top 10 lists. We have top 10 principles. And I said, wait a minute. If every human being is violating God's principles, who's going to listen to John Hewitt's principles? No one, right? So I'm fooling myself if I believe that people are going to follow John Hewitt's principles. And so I immediately thought, okay, well, how do I get people to do a better job of, they're not going to follow 100%, just like they're not going to follow 10 commands. How do I improve that? And so we did some things that are unusual. One thing is top 10%, only top 10% of companies do this. We had a culture committee that focuses on culture. And so we took great, most best attitude people in the company and put them in a group and say, improve our culture. And we did things like cookouts and joined races and all kinds of stuff that they did. But most importantly, I did that I've never seen anyone else do, is we made up pads of paper with the 10 principles on it. And you would have a place for a name, and then you'd put someone's name, and you check which principle they either violated or they succeeded in applying. And then you write an explanation, and you would give it to a person. So we were and you were as part of your job, you were expected to give out at least 3 of them a month to someone in the organization. And most people are reluctant to criticize. So most of them were positive that, oh, I saw you did that, and you upheld the principles of our company by treating people respectfully or whatever. And so I learned that from sitting in church, and the fact that, as God says, everyone violates the 10 commandments. So I've worked that into most of my talks.
Oh yeah, that's so good. Having 10 principles and tracking everybody from them. And also, if they're your 10 principles, tracking yourself from them too, right? Keeping yourself accountable.
No one's going to be more principled in your company than you are. So it falls upon the leader. It falls upon the leader to be the example. And you can't have a principle written down and then violate it, because it's not a principle anymore, right?
Right.
If it says to be honest, simplistically to be honest, and you're a liar, then no one's going to believe you that these aren't real principles. You violated that from day one. So you have to have principles that you can be exemplary.
And following those principles builds your integrity, makes you an integrous person, and also builds that authenticity. And that authenticity is something that unknowingly people pick up on. If you're authentic or inauthentic, people know. Even if they don't know that they know.
It's and you know, when you think about it and you watch little children, it starts with a 1-year-old or 2-year-old. I mean, they're watching you, and you have to set a great example for your children. You don't understand how young of an age even your children are, and you owe it to your children to set a great example, because where else in life do you get a male role model and a female role model if not from your parents? And that is so important in who you are when you grow up. But they're watching at a very young age. So if you're swearing and cursing and angry and hateful, you're not born hating anyone. And most people, at least a good percentage of people, learn to hate, and they learn to be prejudiced. We as a country we accuse ourselves of being prejudiced, and yet we're not even close to the most prejudiced country in the world. I mean, go to Japan and find people that aren't Japanese, or go to China and find people that aren't Chinese. I mean, there's very few there. I mean, we are the pool of every culture in the world here in the United States. And it's natural to be defensive of others that look different or talk different or have different differences. But we are the most one of the least prejudiced countries on the planet. Most countries, major companies like India, go to India. How many Indians are there? I mean, guess what percentage of, and I don't know the answer to this question, guess what percentage of people that live in India are Indian? And then guess what percentage of people that live, there's no population in the United States that more than 60%. But in India, it's 90%. In China, it's 98%. In Japan, it's 95% that are Japanese, Chinese, and Indian. So that's important, incredibly important.
That's a great perspective. Yeah, that's why America is the melting pot, right? That's
right.
Where that name comes
from. That's
from.
one of the two things that made us great. There are two things that made us great. capitalism and melting pot.
Mm-hmm.
Those are, to me, more than anything else, it's those two things.
That's a really great perspective to have it, and to give you perspective on what's really going on in the world. I'm curious. I'm sure being in business, you've made a lot of mistakes, learned from them, and grown from them. What mistake taught you the most and helped you to grow the most?
Well, as you said, I made a lot of mistakes, and they say people who have the most successful have made the most mistakes. So I'm twice as old as you and have made 5 times the number of mistakes you made. If you want to be as successful as myself, and I've been incredibly successful, then you have to be prepared to make a lot of mistakes. So I'm not sure which mistake is the most impactful, but I'll tell you one of the biggest mistakes I made, and how stupid I was. And thinking back, when in my book I talk about, this is the second biggest mistake I ever made. When I left H&R Block had 9,000 offices, and we bought a company called Mel Jackson Tax Service. They had 6 offices, and I told my investors, I'm so cocky that I told my investors, we're going to have 9,001 offices. We're going to add 8,995 offices. Now, totally unrealistic, right? Totally unrealistic. And big, hairy, audacious goal. Well, we never made it to 9,000. We made it to 6,000 and became a $1 billion company. So, but along the way, I started out and we bought 6 offices, and they were all company owned. And then in the first season, that was August, by January, I had 11. By the following January, I had 15. And as I was 2 years old, going into my 3rd season, we were going to have 22. And I said, and that's not bad, growing from 6 to 22 in 2.5 years, right? That's rare. Top 10% for sure. Yeah. If not top 1%. So that's pretty good. But I needed 9,000 offices. And I figured I would be like 800 years old before I got to 9,000 offices at that rate. So I said, what do we do different? Well, I said, well, wait a minute now. When I started at H&R Block in 1969, they were 95% franchise. And we didn't have the first franchise. What am I doing? What am I thinking? We need a franchise. And so then we grew from 22 to 49 to 200 to 300 to 500. And I started franchising. I was so naive, or you could call it stupid. I just didn't start franchising from day one. What was I thinking? And so when I started Liberty Tax, first day franchising. When I started Loyalty Brands, first day franchising. Huge error that I had made by, and I don't know I can't, thinking back, I have no clue why I didn't do it. What was I thinking? I wasn't thinking.
Yeah. That's what it was, right? You weren't thinking about it.
Right. I didn't really grasp the concept of, I said I'm going to do 9,000. I didn't realize that I needed to think about that and think, okay, that's unbelievable. No one would ever believe that. No one would. And so what's the vehicles? What are the 10 key things I need to do to get to 9,000 offices? And one of them, if I thought and put a group together, thought about it carefully, I think franchising would have come to mind very quickly. But it took me 2.5 years to start, 2 years, at least 2 years, about 2 years to start on that journey of franchising.
Yeah, when I'm working with businesses, I like to use the EOS model, the entrepreneurial operating system, from the book Traction from Gino Wickman. And the biggest component of a great business is having a visionary and an implementer, right? So that vision of 9,000, big, hairy, audacious goal, but then the implementation, you got to have the implementation of putting that into action. Those two things are essential to go together. So that's a really good point. Like, having that gigantic vision is fantastic. But my mom, I always say my mom's a bit of a delusional optimistic. She always she always wants to have, she's like, we can do this, we can do that, but she doesn't really have a plan to get there, right? Which is a great thing.
That's where you come in.
Yeah, exactly. So as we come to the end of this episode, I want to just, first of all, thank you. This has been wonderful and amazing, really an honor to sit down here with you today. But I want to talk about loyalty brands. People can check out loyaltybrands.com, but I want to encourage them also. The strategy for winning can be yours. Loyaltybrands.com/free I Compete book. What can they expect when they go to the website and get that book?
It's a autobiography of my journey. I finished it and published it 13 years ago. So it ended about 13 years ago. But and I think the one unique thing in my book that from people that have read it told me, when I was writing it, it didn't occur to me that I was doing it different. I've read every autobiography of every great entrepreneur I could find, and if they publish a new one, I will grab it and read it. But one thing people compliment me on is talking about my mistakes and how I overcame mistakes. So you mentioned that yourself. I guess I admit more mistakes than most others do in their autobiography. But it's the story of how to build two great companies of 10,000 locations with $1.5 billion in value of public companies.
That is the value of the book, taking somebody's life experience and compacting all of these years of hard work that you've put in, and vision and mistakes and overcoming them, and the trials and the celebrations all into one book that you can read and get all of that wisdom. So I thank you for that. So I encourage everybody to go to loyaltybrands.com/free I Compete book and pick that up. You can get it in the show notes. The link is in there for this episode. Also, I want to remind everybody, if you want to launch your podcast, or if you have a podcast, you want to streamline it, monetize it, join the Pro Podcaster Academy at robzwentz.com. John, it's been an honor. Anything you want to leave the audience with before we sign off?
Find something you love to do. Work hard. Persevere.
There you go. The best things are said in the least amount of words, right? The most powerful thing. So I love that. Thank you so much, sir. This is another fantastic example of a true testimony of breakthrough. Until next time, this has been the Unstuck Movement.